Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another Shiny Gathering. We have two fantastic instructors with us today. Aaron Clark, a senior principal data scientist at Arcus Biosciences. He's an active contributor to the R community and part of the R Validation Hub committee. He co-leads the development of the risk assessment package. Fun fact, he won the Shiny Conf 2023 Best App showcase for the risk assessment app that we have the workshop for today. Joining him is Jeff Thompson, a clinical data analyst at Arcus Biosciences, who shares a passion to R, Shiny, and open source development. He's also experienced with traditional BI tools like Power BI, making him relatable to broad audience among us. Jeff is the other co-lead for the risk assessment package. So he's also a prolific contributor to it. So we can look forward to invaluable insights from both of them for a complete vision behind its creation. Welcome and thank you for taking this workshop.
Okay, I believe I've shared my screen. Let me know if I haven't, but yes, thank you everyone so much for joining. My name is Aaron Clark. I'm going to be co-presenting with Jeff today. We're representing the R Validation Hub. So we'll introduce you to that group if you've never heard of us. But yeah, we're going to do a special workshop, one that I don't think we've ever quite done in its entirety before. So I think this will be really interesting to follow along with. Speaking of following along, we do have slides available, and we'll post those in the chat so that you have access to them and can refer back to them whenever you need to. Okay, so quick disclaimer, any opinions expressed within the presentation are solely mine, not necessarily reflective of those that are sponsoring the work. But a quick intro to the R Validation Hub. So we exist really to support the adoption of R in a regulatory setting. I know here it says on my screen biopharmaceutical, but honestly, a lot of the work that we're doing is of interest to several other industries because lots of industries are regulated by governing bodies. And so we have lots of interest from agriculture, from finance, and other groups as well. But we originally started as a group that grew out of R Pharma back in 2018. So that was, I believe, the first in-person conference for R Pharma in the Boston area. And now we're currently led by approximately 10 organizations. We frequently try to involve the FDA whenever possible. And we have lots of folks that are consuming our content whenever we publish things to, like products such as the following to our website. So cornerstone to the R Validation Hub is the white paper. So this was published early on in our inception, and it really lays out sort of the groundwork for a risk-based approach to validation. So if you've never read it, please check out pharmaR.org. Really, that's where all these resources live and breathe, and there's lots of opportunities to get involved. So we're going to spend a lot of time on the risk metric and risk assessment work streams. So I'll address those in a little bit, but just wanted to highlight, we also have a repositories working group that's doing some really cool cutting edge work right now, trying to build a public validation ready resource for our packages. At the same time, we have a communications work stream, which is doing some really great work connecting validation experts across the industry and even across industries, like I said, into finance or agriculture, things like that. Okay, so if you're interested in learning more from us or attending our next meetup, we do community meetings quarterly. And so if you follow the R Consortium on LinkedIn or one of the other platforms, you can see advertisements for these events. But the easiest way to stay in tune with what the R Validation Hub is up to is to go to pharmaR.org and just click on the Get Involved tab. That'll show you how you can sign up for a mailing list, or if you want to contribute to one of these work streams, there's opportunities to get involved there. Okay, so today's agenda, I'm pretty excited. We're going to give just a quick recap of the risk assessment app workstream, just in case you're not familiar with it. And then we're going to get in the meat and potatoes of the talk. So we're going to go through two different point of views. So first, as a reviewer, if it's your first time reviewing a package in the app, and we really want to highlight what we feel is the app's best, I would say highest and best use. And then we're going to switch gears and talk a little bit more about the admin's point of view. So if you are someone who's provisioning and deploying this application within your organization, we have some real special content developed for you. If we do our job right, we should be hitting about 10 minutes of room discussion at the end. So if you have questions, feel free to save them for the end, or if you prefer, you can always submit those in the chat, and either me or Jeff will get to those live while we're discussing. Just wanted to mention that this talk isn't going to be about latest features. If you're interested in the latest features of the app, you can check out the demo that we gave at PositConf 2024. Or you can check out our blog. So we have posts all the time about new features that we release. Today's going to be a little different, going through those 2 point of views that I just discussed. Okay, so the 2 tools at hand, risk metric and risk assessment. So a risk metric is basically a package that you can use to assess the quality of other R packages. And it does that from a number of different perspectives. It does that from a development best practices perspective, code documentation, community engagement, and others besides that. And they're always adding new and new assessments and metrics onto the list. So I may not even be up to date on all of them, honestly. And then the Shiny application is called Risk Assessment. And so that's what Jeff and I have been contributing on for the last several years. This is a golemized Shiny app. And its main goal is just to extend the utility of risk metric and provide like sort of a central hub for your organization to assess package risk in the same way that your GXP like system administrators do. Just to give a few examples of what risk metric can serve up for you to begin to evaluate and assess, is it'll go and find out if the package you're interested in has a license. Does it have a place to report bugs? Is there complete function documentation? A really big one is just making sure that the test coverage is adequate. So it'll calculate those test coverage numbers for you. Another really 2 big ones is, how many downloads is this package getting annually? As a determination of how popular it is, or how many reverse dependencies does it have? Like if a lot of other packages are depending on it, then it's probably, it can be considered a pretty quality piece of software. So those are all just important metrics to take in consideration when you're developing your validation strategy. Okay, so why create the Shiny app? There's going to be many reasons, but we really want to hone in on this main goal, or the highest and best use of the app. We think that it's really to complement the folks who are requesting new packages be added to the GXP environment, and it really arms them with some data. So we're not naive to think that people are using this Shiny app to be their central source for all of their validation endeavors. Most of the time, you're going to have someone who's writing a script, developing a pipeline to automatically assess risk of certain packages, and they're not going to do that all through a user interface, right? So we found that it's really helpful for when folks like this gentleman, let's say his name is Bob, and he found this package GT Summary. It creates great graphical summaries, tabular summaries, and he's interested in using it for an upcoming analysis. And let's say Bob goes and he tries to use library GT Summary in the GXP environment, and it doesn't work. Maybe he goes and checks out the package manager, and he doesn't find it in the list of qualified R packages. And so Bob is going to then go approach his GXP system admin or that person or their team. Let's say this guy's name is Gerald, and say, hey, can we add GT Summary? So we would argue that maybe this isn't the best approach. We would argue that maybe Bob should take some of the responsibility to assess this package on his own before requesting it. And that the GXP system administrator should seek to use the risk assessment summary report as a starting point for considering adding it, because the app has some built-in decision triage capabilities, and these are going to be defined on your organization's rules to output that risk summary report. So what does this mean? It just means, hey, we're going to change the conversation from can we add this to a more informed, statement from Bob saying, I think we can add this. Or maybe we can add this if we make a few exceptions. Or how can we add this knowing that, this package isn't meeting this one rule or this one requirement. So it really arms Bob with a little bit more data, a little bit more information before they can sort of request a package be added. There's lots of secondary perks. So first and foremost, this is going to allow you not to have to write custom risk metric code. It's a user interface, right? And if you've ever run risk metric code before, you know that there's actually lots of different ways to do it. And depending on how you do it is going to produce different results. And so that's another bonus of the Shiny app is that it's going to become a central hub for reproducibility because we're running risk metric the same way on the same machine every single time. And then something we've already kind of cued at a bit is that you can maintain some really consistent org-specific settings. So if you want to put up some guardrails for the folks that are reviewing these packages and say, hey, these are our organization's rules, and these are the things that are important to us, you can do that within the Shiny app. You can also manage who's involved in the review process. So you can authenticate users to have different roles, and those roles are attached to certain privileges in the app. So if you only want certain users to be able to, submit comments, write commentary, you only want some users to be able to approve or disapprove of a package, you can control that. Similarly, you can facilitate communication. So like I said, you can comment on certain metrics. You can write a package summary. And all of those comments are going to show up in your risk summary report that you're going to deliver to Gerald's GXP system team. Okay, so let's play out that point of view as a reviewer. Let's say I am Bob, and I've never used risk assessment before. And so because of that, I don't know it exists. And so I go to Gerald. I say, hey, I want to use GT Summary. So Gerald is going to be very gracious and say, thanks for reaching out, Bob. But we actually have this thing called the risk assessment application. And in order to submit a new request to add a package, we require that you also develop a risk summary report from the risk assessment app. And so I want you to go there, but I want you to not have to worry about risk scores. So you're going to go there and you're going to see that there's risk scores kind of littered throughout the app. But our organization doesn't really make decisions based off of risk scores. So don't worry about those. Also, our organization has rules and requirements that all the first order dependencies of GT Summary are also going to have to be considered low risk. So as you review GT Summary, make sure you also look at all of its dependencies. And if there are any issues, like potentially something isn't low risk with your package or the dependencies, consider writing a summary that attempts to justify inclusion if you still think it's necessary. And then lastly, there's going to be a few metrics in the app that aren't going to be populated with info. And that's because the app is grabbing info from CRAN. And because of that, it's not going to get things like test coverage or function documentation completeness and things like that. So if everything else passes the test, don't worry about it. Gerald is going to say, me and my team will run those assessments after the fact. Okay, so I'm going to pop over. So this is a deployment of risk assessment that we have on Shiny Apps.io. And I'll share this link after the demo wraps up, but you likely won't be signing into Shiny Apps.io within your organization. It'll likely be deployed on Posit Connect, which Jeff will talk a little bit more about deploying to Posit Connect after I wrap up this use case. But if you are interested in checking out this demo, like I said, we'll share it. But just notice down here at the bottom, there's several usernames and passwords that all correlate with a certain role in the app. So
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think
yes.
you're just sharing the presentation. We don't see the app.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me change my sharing mode. Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, thanks for letting me know. You guys can see that?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, sorry about that. So I was just showing down here that you can log in with different credentials depending on what you want to do. So if you want to log in as an admin, you're more than welcome to. If you want to log in as a viewer, you can, but you'll have no privileges really. You'll just be able to view things. And Jeff will talk about the different roles a little bit later as well. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. And once I'm in here, I think you may think there's kind of a lot going on. Like, where do I start first? So naturally, you could go over and see this user guide. Looks like it sticks out quite well. So maybe you want to check out the user guide. There's a nice getting started vignette right here that walks you through like how to use the app for the first time. It shows that there's some self-guided tours in the app. So maybe you prefer to take a self-guided tour. So we'll just do that briefly. It looks like the best place to start here is just to go ahead and type in a package name that you're interested in. So if I'm Bob, I'm going to write in GT summary and it's going to autocomplete that for me. But let's just, for the sake, let's just keep browsing around a little bit. It looks like I can also upload an entire CSV of package names. So let's say I have like 100 packages that I want to assess. You can do that. So you can upload 100 packages right there. There is a sample CSV right there. So if you want to use that as a template, you can do that. It looks like in the About tab, we can learn more about the assessments and how they work. We can learn that, hey, there's a database on the back end that's storing all these assessments. This is where I can see if something's been previously uploaded. So maybe I'll go ahead and check GT summary right there. Each package is going to have a status, whether it's reviewed or under review. And then there's going to be a risk score associated with each package. But as was mentioned by Gerald, our organization doesn't necessarily make decisions based off risk score. So we're just going to ignore that. This is the last point I wanted to make before hopping into GT summary. It looks like my organization has some decision categories here. Either a package is approved or rejected. And in the middle, it looks like there's two other options. My package could either be low risk or needs review. So those are the decision criteria that Gerald and his team decided for this application. So either approve or rejected, or in the middle here, we have low risk or needs review. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go to the database and see if I can find GT summary. So it looks like there's 341 packages already in the database, and all of them have a decision associated with them. So that's good to know. 103 are approved, 97 are low risk, and 141 are needing review still. So if I scroll down, I can see all of these packages, the zoo package, exporter, xtable. So I'll go ahead and just type in GT summary. It looks like GT summary is not here. So that tells me that I need to load it. So I'm going to go back to upload package and type GT summary. And then you can add multiple packages here if you want, but I'm just going to do one, and it works. Okay, so uploading GT summary. It's going to go ahead and save those assessments to the database, and it's going to store it in there indefinitely until it gets replaced. So as soon as that's done uploading, it's going to give me a summary here down below. Here you can see that it's going to upload the latest version of GT summary, so uploaded 2.0.4. And it says that it's new, so that's not a duplicate. You're not uploading, a previously uploaded package. And it does give me that score. So like Gerald said earlier, don't worry about the scores, but it was assigned a decision of low risk. So if I look here, it says that this decision came from Rule 7. And so as Bob, someone who's never used the application before, he's going to say, well, where have I seen rules before? The only place I see rules is right here in this decision automation section. And so Rule 7 is clearly down at the bottom, and it says else, low risk. So that means that the application is running through all these rules 1 through 6. And if none of those are violated, then the package is going to be considered low risk. So if we look at this, it's going to say, I'll make this a little bigger. Rule 6 is, does the package have a news file? Or rule 1. If it doesn't have a news file, so you can actually use this conditional formula, it's going to automatically categorize the package as needing review. Rule 2 is going to state that if there's no place to view the source code, this package also needs review. If there's no place to report bugs, this package is going to need review, and then so on and so forth. So dependencies, the dependency count has to be greater than 30. The package downloads has to be greater than 48,000 annually. If it's not, then the package is going to need review. And then last, if the reverse dependencies is less than or equal to 5, the package is going to need review. So thankfully, GT Summary passed all of these rules 1 through 6, and it was deemed low risk. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Explore Metrics. This is going to bring me to the Package Metrics tab. This is where I can view, any of the risk metrics that are getting served to me. So I see a lot of green check marks. I imagine that's a good sign. If I hover over, it says score is equal to 0. That indicates the lowest possible risk. And then, of course, remember Gerald told us, don't worry about the scores. We're really interested in these assessment values. So, for example, there's 5 vignettes. Though we don't have a rule about vignettes in this organization. Bug closure rate looks really nice. Okay, yeah, here's test coverage. Gerald told me that this wasn't going to be available because the app is pulling information from CRAN, and that's not available on CRAN. Number of dependencies is 9, so that's decent. It's pretty low. It's definitely way less than 30. Besides maintenance metrics, I can check out community metrics. So this is neat because it tells me when the package was first released. So this was released 5 years ago, and the latest version release was 2 months ago. So that's good. It tells me that the package is still in active development. And we know here that there's almost 500,000 downloads of GT Summary in the last 12 months. So that's pretty good. That's a pretty good number right there. And then you can even see that it's trending upwards. It's going up about 750 downloads per month. Reverse dependencies, so these are packages that depend on GT Summary, is at a number of 21. 21 is a great number. That's way higher than 5. Okay, so there's this cool number of downloads by month visual. And so this is cool because you can see how popular a package is month by month. Here you can see January 2024, there's 52,000 downloads of GT Summary. You can see these green vertical lines are just the different version releases that came out from month to month. And then this orange line is just the trend line. So it shows whether it's trending upwards or downwards over the last 2 years. Okay, so as a reviewer, I'm just going to go ahead and say, hey, this package looks really popular at 500K downloads and 21 reverse dependencies. Oop. And so I'm going to make this comment. Currently, you can see that it says there's no comments. I'm going to make this comment because I want this to come through my package summary report that I eventually am going to share with Gerald and his team. So now that I've reviewed community metrics, I can hop over to package dependencies. And the first thing I see is that, hey, not all the package dependencies are loaded. There's only 8 out of the 9. So a good first start here, though, is to see that, hey, we've made decisions on all these, and all of them are either approved or low risk. So that's a huge win. So that just tells me I need to upload this final package. So there's a little button right here to allow me to upload cards. I'm going to go ahead and load that package. Great. So I'm going to upload cards. That's going to save all the cards assessments to the database. And then I'm going to pop over to the upload packages tab. I think that'll be handy once the package is fully uploaded. Oh, so that's kind of a downer right there. So Gerald said that I needed all my packages to be low risk. It looks like this one still needs review. The decision rule that it violated is Rule 6. So if I look at rule 6, it says, hey, reverse dependencies has to be, if it's less than or equal to 5, then it needs review. So that tells me that, we must have less than 5. So if I go, I'm just going to click the Explore Metrics button. That's going to bring me here. I see a lot of green check marks. That's good. This package doesn't have vignettes, but that isn't a rule for our organization, so we don't need to have vignettes. There's only 6 dependencies, so that's pretty good. Let me click on community usage. Okay, so cards, this is interesting. It's only existed for 11 months. But despite that, not even having 12 months worth of data, it already has 250,000 downloads. So that's actually pretty excellent considering the short lifespan. But here's the issue at hand. It looks like it has 3 reverse dependencies. So that is definitely much lower than, not much lower. It's a couple, it's a couple lower than what we expected. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And that's going to bring me to the package dependency tab. And then it's going to show me what those 3 dependencies are. Reverse dependencies. So GT summary, as we know, depends on cards, card X, and then broom helpers. So knowing the broom package, I know that broom helpers is a tidyverse package. So that actually bodes well, I think, for cards, because I know internally we prioritize the tidyverse packages in our validation strategy. So if tidyverse is important to us, then if tidyverse is depending on cards, then we should likely be okay also depending on cards. So I think I'll make note of that in my package summary. And speaking of package summary, I think it's time for me to head over to the Source Explorer, and I'll go back to GT summary. So just before I start to build my report, I think I'm going to just take a look at this package browser. So this is cool. It allows you to browse any files in the source code for the package. And specifically, I'm going to look at tests. So you can see this is just a little file navigator. And I'm not going to inspect these tests right now, but I'm just going to scroll through and see, wow, there's a ton of tests for GT summary. Like if I had to guess, it looks like there's maybe 40 tests here. So that seems like it'd be pretty good. If I wanted to, I can actually hop to the Function Explorer and see how each of these tests are written. So for example, I can click on any function, and it's going to show me how many different files this test or this function actually shows up in. So add difference is the name of the function, and it shows up in several different places. I can also look at the source code. I can look at the help documentation for if I want to learn how to use this function, etc. So I feel like I've gathered enough information here. So I'm going to go to build my report. So this is the last step I need to do before I communicate back with Gerald and his team of GXP engineers. I can download a report as an HTML, doc, or PDF. Gerald didn't tell me which one to choose, so I'll just go with HTML. A rendering of the actual report is going to show up down below. So you can see that this has general information about the package, like the author, description, the title. It's going to have some automatically generated comments. So it says, hey, this package was designed as low risk because it met all the conditions in the decision rules. There's no package summary. So I did mention I wanted to add a package summary because we did have that potential issue with cards. So in the interest of time, I've actually already have a package summary that I've pre-written for this, but it basically says overall GT summary is well supported, documented, and it appears to be well tested. It has a lot of package downloads, 21 reverse dependencies. It's considered low risk by our decision rules, yet there may be one potentially problematic dependency, cards. We investigated cards because it failed to pass our decision rules and found that it simply has too few reverse dependencies at 3 instead of 5. So I think, however, I think we can make an exception given this dependency is for a popular tidyverse package, Broom. And if the tidyverse is willing to depend on it, then maybe we should too. So these are all just talking points that I'm going to use as I'm approaching Gerald to say like, hey, I did my due diligence. I assessed this package, and this is what I found. So I'm going to go ahead and copy paste this. I'm going to submit this summary. I'm going to submit it. So now you can see it shows up right here. Here's our package summary. Here's what I just wrote. And I'm going to download the report. I think I will remove the risk score. So you can choose to remove whatever you want from the report. So the risk score was right here, and now it's gone. I'll download it. And then because cards was problematic, I'm also going to download a report for cards. So I'm going to hop over to the cards package, and then I'm going to put that package summary in here as well. So this one is just specific to cards. It doesn't mention anything about GT summary. And I'll hit submit. That'll be my summary. And then I will download. Okay, there's the package for cards. So now that I have those, I'll just pop those up. Let me see. Here's GT summary. Here's cards. Okay, so yeah, this is the exact HTML report that I'm going to share with Gerald and his team. It has everything in it that we reviewed together: maintenance metrics, community usage metrics. In HTML, this graphic is still, interactive, which is cool. Has all of this information, including the dependency cards that needs review. And thankfully, I wrote a package summary that kind of talks about that. So it'll be a great point for us to start. So heading back here, this is what I'm giving to Gerald. I have 2 reports, and it's going to be a great starting point for us to have that discussion. So yeah, that's kind of the first point of view that we wanted to give you. Sorry it took a little bit longer, wasted a few minutes getting my deployment to work, but that tends to happen on demo day. So sorry about that. I'm gonna hand things over to Jeff. He's gonna give us the point of view of an admin user configuring and customizing the application for better use.
All right, thanks, Aaron. I'm just gonna share my screen real quick. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit more about the perspective of like the deployer or the admin of the app who maybe needs to customize the configuration of the deployment that they're using. Okay, so the first thing I want to point you towards is just this is our documentation. More specifically, I want to point towards the deployment article under our articles tab. So this will give a lot of information. I'm not going to cover everything in this, but you can go here and look through more of the details after the talk if you like. One thing I do want to point out here is that we strongly encourage you to either clone or fork the risk assessment repository from GitHub instead of installing it directly. A couple of reasons for this. It will allow you easier version control so that when updates are pushed to the risk assessment repo, you can choose when you want to incorporate those changes. And it also can help you with deployment, especially if you're looking to deploy it from Connect. Okay, so I'm going to hop over to our studio here. Okay, so I have forked the risk assessment I've created an R project here. So I forked it to my personal GitHub, and that's what I'm using. And so the project does use our env. I've already set up the environment here, so we don't have to go through that headache. Anyways, so if we are wanting to customize our deployment, you need to go to the install files. So we have used Golem to structure this project. So it has the setup of like basically an R package. So in the inst folder, there is a configuration file. I'm going to open this. All right. So if you look in here, you'll see that there are several configurations. There's a default configuration that we have here, and there's some example configurations. Now I want to focus mostly on the configuration at the bottom. This may probably not well named, but it's called non-credentialed. And you'll see that this does not use Shiny Manager. So I want to show a configuration using this type of deployment. Okay. If you are not familiar with using Golem or configuration files, here I'm just gonna, so with Golem, it uses the environmental variable Golem config active, which we can set. But the config R package will use a similar setup where it says R config active. You can use either to specify which configuration you want to use. Okay. So, in the interest of time, I've kind of. So let's go to our first step and let's create a configuration. So when you're doing this for your organization, you could just overwrite this file. For the interest of the demonstration, I've just added it to the bottom. So I've called it Connect Demo. I do not want to use Shiny Manager because I plan to use Connect. And for the moment, I'm just going to save the database locally, CD for Connect Demo. Okay. So if I'm doing this to Connect, I may have a setup on Connect where I have like a mounted drive where I might want to be storing this database in a place that's accessible from my local PC, maybe via a network drive, as well as accessible from the server that Connect is on. Okay, so I can do that using the configuration setup here. I can create a local demo, and it's going to be pointing to my network path where I want the database to be stored in the login file. And then I can have a configuration for my production that is going to be pointing towards wherever that data folder is stored, that mounted data folder is stored there. Okay. And if you notice on both of these, I'm going to inherit from my Connect demo. Okay, so that means I can build out my specialized configuration here. And whether I'm running the app locally or I'm running it on the server, I can have the same configuration set up and expectation from both sides. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add some decision categories. So these are the same decision categories that Aaron had in his demo that Bob was looking at. Maybe I have like an approved. So these are the packages that are already in our validated environment. Maybe I have like a low risk category here, indicating that maybe it passes a lot of tests that we have in the app, talking about our decision pipeline there. And so basically a user just needs to submit for it to be included, and there's just some other paperwork. And maybe I have another category needs review, saying that maybe there's some additional documentation that's needed before the package can be accepted. And then maybe also I have like a rejected category. These are packages that we have already evaluated and have decided that we would not be using in our validated environment. Okay, so this can be helpful because a user may be looking at a package and say maybe it's already rejected, or maybe it depends on a package that has already been rejected by our organization, so they can know that that's an issue with its inclusion. Okay. Another thing I want to point out here is a lot of times we have these categories kind of from like a best to worst. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case. They don't have to be like a Likert scale. You can also think of maybe you have like different levels of approval at your organization. Maybe you have like some packages that are approved for statistical type use, and then you have other packages that maybe the barrier for inclusion isn't as stringent for like data displays and stuff like that, maybe Shiny apps. So you could have all of those categories in here and really build out your database, your decision database like that. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about are the decision rules. So you might have noticed when Aaron was demonstrating that some of those rules had like a function usage. It was metric score. That's from risk metric. So I do want to point out that all of risk metric is imported to risk assessment. So any functions that are available from that package you can use in your decision rules. But if you're cloning or forking risk assessment, you really can have a lot more flexibility on that front. You can include your own functions. You can just have them, you can add them to your own branch of the risk assessment that you're using to deploy. Maybe you have a internal package that uses the risk metric assessments to make decisions. The thing you have to keep in mind is that the functions will be taking as an input a risk metric assessment, and as an output is expecting a logical, so a true or false. Okay, so for the purposes of demonstration, I have elected to add some functions. So remember, it's a golemized project. So in the R folder is where the R code would be. I've created a file called custom functions, and here I have two custom functions. The first is GPL license, and this takes an assessment. It checks to see if GPL is in the license, and it returns true if it's there, false if not. The other, a little tongue-in-cheek, Russian roulette. So this will randomly return true 1/6 of the time on average. Okay. Why someone would want to base a decision off of that, I don't know. But here we are. So the rules here, I would encourage you to go to our documentation for even more discussion about how to build these rules out. But to build rules on a metric, so we have like this naming convention, our first rule, we need to specify what metric it is. So we say this is the license. The condition, I want to use that Russian roulette function I just specified. The decision, if it returns true, I want to reject it. And then I have this else rule for all other, if it doesn't get automatically rejected by Russian roulette, I want to put it in the needs review. Okay. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of customization that you can do here. And when you put the rules in your configuration file, when you initialize your app, these will just be there from the start. Okay. The last thing we need to talk about is regarding roles and privileges. When you are not using Shiny Manager, the roles and privileges have a little bit of a different usage. Okay, so there's always going to be a default role when you're using a Connect deployment, and it automatically goes with 0 privileges. So they would just be able to see what's already in the app itself. Okay, so we're going to say that our default user can add packages and comment. All right, and then I have another role called risk assessment admin, and they have all the privileges. Okay, now the thing to note about the roles when you're using Connect is these correspond to groups on Posit Connect itself. So however your organization handles that, whether or not you have like an admin role on Connect and you can create the groups yourself, or maybe the groups are handled from another group at your organization, they're brought in. The main thing is that the naming used for this needs to match up, and that so the naming needs to match up, and the people who are members of that group will be given these privileges. All right, so since I have this configuration set up, I could just go to my root directory and I can run this app. So if you look at this, you'll see that it is going to be building out the database, and then it will deploy. Okay, so it's created my CD database, patiently waiting for it to pop into my browser. All right. So a little slow right now, but you can see, okay, my rules are here. The 4 decisions I had in the configuration are here. Everything's looking good to go. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. So a couple gotchas about this is the configuration file is really built around the initialization of the database. Once you have the database created, risk assessment is going to be looking at that to see what roles and the decisions and the rules is going to be looking there. Okay. But we do have where you can configure some of these items and the application itself. So I want to go ahead and move to that. So let me see. I'm going to close this. This is fine. Little technical difficulties. Just need to reload. Okay, so this is what we just created, but this is actually on Posit Connect. Okay, so you see the same rules that I had before and the decisions. If we go over to the database, I've already preloaded some packages in here. We'll be like, what's going on here? Why is Tibble rejected? If we click on that, we see, hey, the decision rule told us it was rejected because it returned true for Russian roulette. And we could be like, this isn't what we meant for this decision rule to be based off of. But maybe I don't really know how to build a rule for a license. In the application itself, you can go to the About tab, and in there we have a sub-tab, assessment criteria, where we can look through the different assessments. You go over to maintenance metrics, you'll see we have a table here that has all those maintenance metrics. It kind of tells us loosely what it's counting and why it's included. But we also have hyperlinks that go to the risk metric documentation. So I can click on this for license. Brings me to the documentation for how the license assessment is created, and it tells me it returns a string indicating the license. So really, I should be looking at that string to base a rule on if I so choose, wanted to. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. Going to say, hey, we actually meant to use the is GPL license to do our rule. And so I can actually edit these configuration rules here in the application. So I can just go in here. I wanted this to be as GPL license. I want to say it needs review. Maybe I need some additional documentation how I'm using a package if it has a GPL license. I don't know. We can apply this decision rule. Give us a modal saying, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Yes. And we can see it's updated here in the app. You can also edit the category colors. You can do this in the configuration file itself if you want, or you can do it in the app. So yeah, I want this to be something more orangish or something. Okay, so I can apply these colors. It'll say, are you sure? I can submit it. I can even hop back over here to the database and see maybe that color choice wasn't so great, but it's there. Okay. The other thing you can do if you have privileges to make decisions, you can actually upload a list of packages with the decisions made. So to demonstrate this, I have, let me see here, where is it? Have a CSV. So there's just two packages in this CSV to upload. One is vectors, the other is Rhino. I want to say I want to pass an approved decision to vectors. Okay, so go back in here, browse, upload this. We'll see if, okay, good. Always a little anxious after, a fellow presenter has some technical difficulties that they'll bleed over, but looks like we're good. Okay, so you can see that it automatically gave approved for vectors. If I check that out, you'll see that it actually gives a little comment and tells me it was approved by upload designation and with my username from Connect. Okay, so it was pulling my username from there. And if we go over to Rhino, we'll see that it has that it was by this decision, the actual function used to do that. Okay. We're running a little short on time. The last thing I wanted to show you guys was that you can manage the configuration of the roles and privileges within the application itself as well. So if you go to the administrative tools, if your user has access to it, their admin, they will be presented with this. You see this matches the configuration we had. Our default user can add packages and comments. The admin has everything else. But say, hey, I actually need a maintainer for my application. I need someone who can make decisions within the application itself. Okay, so I can click on the cog here, and it's going to open this for me. So I can say, oh, oops, not a maintainer, a maintainer. So you can see I can also delete roles, edit their names. You can't mess with the role that you are currently using. And you can also see I can't make myself not an admin in here. That wouldn't make much sense. But so I have this new role. I want him to be able to make decisions, revert decisions, add packages, and delete them if they need to be deleted for whatever reason. And then I can click Apply Changes, and voila, you have a new role, and we can see their privileges. Once again, you just need to make sure if you're using Connect that this role is the same as the group that would be contain the users that should have these privileges. All right, that's all I had. Let me switch over to our final slide deck for room discussion.
Thank you for the wonderful workshop. I see Aaron is already answering the questions from the chat. There's one new one I'll highlight and we can go through that. Any comments on your choice not to use or develop risk score in your organization? Example, it's too challenging or multi-dimensional scaling problem, or choice of cut points for various risk categories can become too black box.
Yeah. So actually, our organization in particular doesn't. We're a smaller organization. Jeff and I just joined earlier this year, and so we don't. Our validation strategy isn't permanent. It's not set in place yet. But there are a lot of organizations who don't subscribe to the risk scores, and that can be seen if you go. I actually shared the link in the chat. Our case studies will actually showcase. It's on pharmaR.org. Showcases how other pharma and biotech companies are approaching validation. And a lot of them are just concerned with the assessments themselves. Some of them do utilize risk score, but they usually are adjusting the weights of each metric. So like there may be some metrics that don't mean anything to them, so they'll weight them as 0, and that'll actually produce maybe a more curated risk score than the default risk score. Oh, sorry, can you guys still hear me?
Can't see you, but can hear you.
Oh, I don't know why, but my microphone just turned off. Yeah, so essentially, you can make a more curated risk score if you weight your things. But normally by default, the risk score isn't very informative. It just gives you like a uniform weight for all of the risk metrics. Internally, yeah, once we fully develop our validation strategy, we'd just be more concerned with the actual metrics, like the things that matter to us the most. Is just going to be kind of similar to what we showed. Like there'll be a flow chart. Like you have to pass these 5 rules or 6 or 10 rules before we'll consider this package being low risk. And those rules are usually more black and white when we just look at the assessment themselves versus like a score. Because yeah, like you said, it could seem a little black box.
We have time for one last question. There's one question from Patrick. Code coverage assessment seems not to be working, even though it seems like an important metric. Why is that? And are there steps where it is active?
Right, I can answer this. So risk assessment is CRAN focused. The code coverage as calculated by risk metric is really doing that on a source of the package. So in order to do your code coverage and all your testing, you really want to do that in the environment in which the packages is actually going to be run. That's where it's most informative. With risk assessment being a Shiny application, you obviously don't want to be running that in your deployment. So that's why that's not there, and also why we're highlighting the use case of like this being part of your validation pipeline, because there are stuff like code coverage that you would need to take a little more care to investigate in your actual in the environment in which you would actually be using it.
That actually makes me wonder. You did mention that risk assessment needs to be, the code coverage needs to be run for the environment that you're running in. So does that also mean you need to run this risk assessment application in the container of your validated repositories where they live, so that you can accurately get the risk assessment?
Yeah, that would be best case scenario. We actually haven't done that ourselves yet, but we are early on in our validation journey at our new organization. But yeah, if you could run it in the system or the environment that your GXP environment, or you can at least mimic the environment, then that is the optimal way to go. Yes.
I have one final question about deployment of this, since we are talking about those topics. Uh, when I was looking into the code, I noticed that the database is stored in SQLite data DB, and you also have the ability to download those databases and load it. Is that the way to redeploy and use the same database? Is there a way to upload the existing database? Because I believe when you redeploy it, you lose the database, right?
So yes, so currently open issue to or to allow the re-upload of the SQLite database when you have a deployment. Part of why there's a discussion with Connect, and maybe I know there's an open issue for Shiny server deployments as well. If you have some location that is accessible outside the app itself, you can kind of manage that. So like with Connect, if you have like a mounted drive, and you have access to that outside the app itself, then you don't need to worry about every single time you redeploy or update it getting overwritten. Does that answer? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for the wonderful workshop. And for those of you who are watching it on YouTube, or you got late and didn't have time for questions, please reach out to Aaron and Jeff. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer your questions in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks.